Welcome back to another episode of Import Modify. On this episode, I got more parts in for the Z31, so hopefully we could get the transmission in and everything will work out on the clutch. So, got a lot to do today. I gotta get motivated. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so I got some parts in for the Z31, and what I got is a rear main seal. I pulled the old one out. I did take the clutch and the flywheel off to inspect it, and it was leaking, so got a new one of those. The power steering reservoir feed line to the pump is leaking as well, so I got another one of those. And I decided to get me another throwout bearing with the slider just because, and the slider on there, it had lubrication, but when I went to slide it in and out, it seemed very resistant. So I decided to go ahead and just get a whole nother piece and eliminate any possible problems we would have with that. I did inspect the clutch. The clutch is brand new, and also I looked up the measurements on the clutch to ensure that this is in fact a turbo clutch, because there's a difference between NA and turbo clutch, and the disc is supposed to be 250 millimeters. And if you were to convert that to inches, it was like 9.7 something. And looking at the friction disc here, we're about 9.7 something. So this is in fact a turbo clutch, so that is good. Just had to verify things, and I got with the owner, and the owner told me that the motor was swapped out. It was swapped out with a turbo engine out of an 84 model, but he did have the original transmission and everything that was for the car in the car. So the transmission, the flywheel and all that's original. He just swapped in an 84 turbo engine for the 87 engine that was grenaded. So anyway, we should have this work out just fine. Hopefully. I got my fingers crossed, and I don't know what else the problem would be. There was a lot of resistance on that throwout bearing when I moved it in and out, so I cleaned it up and everything, and we'll see how well it slides once I put the new throwout bearing on it in a second. But I did have a leftover 240Z stainless steel line for the slave cylinder, so I went ahead and checked it out, and turns out that this thing is actually the same size as the one on the car, and they had like a dampener from the factory that goes before the slave, and they had eliminated that, but they used a brake line mod, and it's just a rubber hose, rubber brake line, and it threads in to both ends just fine. He has that in there, but I pulled this out of my, my stuff that I have all stored up there, and this will work just fine. So we're gonna go ahead and upgrade that hose with the stainless steel line, and hopefully that will give me a better pedal feel. And also I did order me a return spring for the pedal itself, and that is yet to come in, but that's not going to stop me from installing the transmission, because that's something that can be done after the fact. So I have my fingers crossed, and hopefully that this will, correct the issue that I was having, and I will be able to, have the clutch return even when it's running. Because the problem before, if you're just tuning in, was I put a new master and slave on the clutch system, and it worked just fine until I started the engine. Once the engine started rotating and I started backing it up, the pedal started sticking to the floor. So I don't know what else could be other than that, because everything else is new. So let's go ahead and start the assembly process. Okay, first things first, we're going to install the rear main seal. And what I like to do is I like to take bearing grease and lace the inside sealing groove of the seal with some bearing grease so that it has lubrication. You never want to install those dry, and you just want to put the grease on the inside, not the outside, just the inside right there, and that will ensure a proper seal. And another thing I like to do before I install it is I take Scotch-Brite and I go ahead and I go around the outside edge where the seal is going to seal, and I make sure that I get any buildup off of that and ensure that it's all clean. So as you can tell, it's nice and clean. Now we're good to go on this, so we're gonna go ahead and install it. But thought I'd just give you guys a little update tip on that, because I notice a lot of people like to just pull them out and slap a new one in. And you know, what's the purpose of having a seal if you're gonna have a lot of contaminants and build up on the crankshaft area and put a seal in? It kind of defeats the purpose. So alright, so I cleaned out the bell housing, got it nice and dry now. I noticed that I had a buildup of oil right there. Whenever I took the transmission out, the input shaft was dry, so the seal should be good. Just that the gasket is leaking, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the cover and see if I can either draw up a new gasket or salvage the one that I have and just add some RTV to it. So we'll see here in a minute, but I'm going to take that off, take care of that, so when I put it back in, I won't have that issue. Alright, so we got the cover back on. I lubricated the seal. I lubricated the surface on the shaft for the seal. Inspected the seal. The seal is indeed good. So the gasket paper stayed stuck to the housing, and that's a good thing. So I just threw some RTV on it to reseal it. And once I took it off, I noticed it was really wet around the bottom side right here. So that confirmed where the leak was coming from. So this ought to seal it up and just give it adequate time to cure. So we should be good on that. I did notice whenever I had it out that it had some good scoring along the shaft right here. So I took some Scotch-Brite and I just, in a circle pattern, back and forth, I cleaned it all up. So got rid of the scoring, and I also took the time and cleaned the clutch fork really good. So I got everything clean, all my pivot surfaces nice and clean. So now we're good to put some lubrication on the shaft, lubrication on the throwout bearing, and install it. And what I like to use on the shaft itself, I use anti-seize. And I felt, well, experience from me doing a lot of clutches, the anti-seize really holds up and it provides adequate lubrication for the application. So that's what I'm going to use. That's what I know is good, so I stick to what I know. So hopefully all this, in the end, me cleaning it and everything and taking the scoring out, is going to help this thing a lot, and that ought to fix the problem. Hopefully, I got my fingers crossed, because I don't know what else it could be, really. Everything's going to be new on this clutch system. So anyway, just give you guys an update on what I did, and now we're going to go ahead and apply the anti-seize and install the clutch fork. The dust cover is in poor condition, so I'm going to order a new one, and when I get that in, I can always put that in after the fact. So I'll go ahead and do that later on. But let's go ahead and lubricate this thing and install the clutch fork and the throwout bearing. Alright guys, so I got the flywheel cleaned up, I got it installed now, and what I had to do is I have one set pin right here, but it's missing one on this side. So what I did was I just zip tied it right here where the starter bracket is on the opposite side and I zip tied it right here because they have a cover plate that goes on this side right there. So that'll hold it in place, and once I get the transmission stabbed in, I'll just clip these off so that the plate will stay where it should be. So that's what I came up with to hold the plate in place. And also I ended up finding me a tool for the clutch right here, and I collect all my clutch centering tools, and I'll show you guys real quick. So there you go. Shows how many clutches I've done in the past. So anyway, I like to keep the tools in case I come into a situation like this. So I ended up having the centering tool, and it says Nissan on top, and it fits just fine. So this right here is marked flywheel side, so this is going to face the flywheel, the opposite side is going to face the clutch. So now I'm going to go ahead and install this clutch. I'm going to center that onto the flywheel, and then we'll put the pressure plate on, and then we'll torque the pressure plate down, and then from there we'll be ready to stab the transmission in. Well, I got the transmission in now, and if I was to tell you that was easy, I'd be lying. It was a pain in the ass, and I couldn't get to a good spot to put the camera because I had to crawl all around in it, but it's in there now. Got the cross member all mounted up. All the bell housing bolts are mounted up. So everything's good. Basically what I had to do is this bolt right there and a bolt right here on the other side. I made those in to give me a guide, and then once I had that as a guide, I had to put the tail shaft in with it in gear so that I could spin the tail shaft to line up the grooves on the friction disc. And once the grooves are lined up, I just basically bench pressed it in, and that's pretty much how I got it to stab itself in. But everything's good now on that. So what I'm gonna do is just take a little bit of a time and clean up the nastiness on the starter and clean up some of the nastiness underneath right here, because a lot of this leaking is from the power steering leak, which I got the hose to fix that. So cool, I'm gonna clean a little bit, and we'll get back to putting this all back together. Alright guys, so I got everything installed on the transmission now, minus the interior pieces here, but pushing the clutch in and out, I can already tell the difference. It is a lot more smoother, it responds a whole lot better, so hopefully that fixes the problem. And I still have the interior piece to put in, shifters in, we're good on that. So I noticed that it calls for GL4 gear oil in the transmission. I do not have GL4, and I'm gonna have to go find some of that stuff. So I also ordered CV axles. That'll be in tomorrow for the rear end. We'll put new CV axles in it, put some gear oil in it, crank her up, and hopefully I won't have any clutch issues, and we'll be able to take this thing on the test drive finally. So I'm tired, I'm beat. I'm gonna go home, take a bath, and just relax. So see you guys tomorrow. We'll pick up where I left off. Back in the garage for another day. We got some axles, we got the oil, and I got some hose clamps so we can get the line replaced on the power steering reservoir. So let's go ahead and get to it. So as you can see, the rear axles, they're pretty shot. This one's not that bad, but well, it's got a torn boot right there. So looks like there's four 14mm bolts. Take those out. Hopefully it has enough room to where I can take it out and let it hang down, and then take a pry bar and just pop them out of the sockets in a differential, and that should be it, hopefully. So let's go ahead and tackle it. Out with the old, in with the new. Good to go. So actually there's some nuts on the back side right here, and you have to have a 14mm wrench, and you get it with an extension and a 14mm ratchet and socket. No problem getting them out. Gives you just enough room to pull the axle back and clear this lower arm right here. So everything worked out smooth on that. So let's go ahead now and get on to taking care of that leaking hose. Alright, so I got everything done on the car, and I backed it up on its own wheel, and everything on the clutch seems to be working just fine. So we're gonna take this thing on a quick spin real quick. So let's go ahead and make a rip. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm dropping my keys and everything. Had to lock my shop up real quick so I can go ahead and take this thing on a little spin. I got the clutch in, got it in reverse. Look at that. We're backing up on our own free will. Got it working good. The steering wheel is 180 out. I got to take it off and put it back in the right position. When he replaced the power steering rack and pinion, he put the shaft in 180 backwards, so the steering wheel's upside down. Here we go. Blow valve sounds pretty cool. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but I do have current tags on it and I have a license plate, so we're gonna get out onto the road and see how well she goes. All right, okay, here we go, and let's go. Not too bad, man, not too bad. The Engine feels pretty good for the most part, and roll the windows up real quick. Yeah, so the engine feels good for the most part. I notice whenever it's getting into boost, there's a little bit of a hiccup, so I need to check the timing and everything on it. But everything in the car seems to be running just fine, so that's a good deal. We're not overheating, and it's a good starting point for a nice daily car, and I'm very, very happy. I'm gonna go ahead and turn around real quick. I'm getting on it. I'm not getting on it too bad. I need to break the clutch in. The clutch is brand new, so definitely don't want to mess the clutch up and have to redo what I just did. So, but it is looking very promising. It looks like I can make a good daily little car out of this thing, and everything is working out fine. So I'm very happy I was able to get that clutch fixed, and that is a very relieving thing for me. And I'm gonna have to turn this around and drive it back to the house. But let me give you a quick little walk around of the car real quick. Cool deal. So I'm going to be improving the car over time. I got to give a big thank you to Eric, because I was looking at a air fuel controller from Ep.70, and they were pretty pricey. He got on one of his forums and got me one for like 60 bucks, and I'm stoked about that, Eric. Thank you very much. So plans for the future of this car: we're going to fix up the suspension better. We're going to get some better wheels later on. We're going to put an intercooler, and we're going to turn up the boost and make our adjustments with the AFC and see how well she goes. But I'm going to drive it for a little while and make sure I get all the kinks out of it before then. So we got some more content on this car to follow. But now that the car is done, we're going to get back to working on the Z32 project and start kicking things back off on that. So this was just a little quick couple episodes in between so I can get this car running right, and I thought it would make great content. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Y'all know what to do: like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys on the next episode.